In today's video, I want to discuss the statement that Prabhupada made about just chant with your tongue and just hear with your ears. Because there's a context to that statement which is often not understood, and then this statement can be misunderstood or misapplied or applied in a way that actually works against us. Of course, we know that Prabhupada said, chant with your tongue, hear with your ears. That's the process. But there's more to the process than just the tongue and the ears. There's also the consciousness, there's also the heart, and there's also the meditation. Now, one time a devotee said, Prabhupada, my mind is wandering when I chant. And Prabhupada said, there's no question of mind, you just chant with your tongue and hear with your ears. But somewhere else, Prabhupada said something a little different. He said, when you chant Hare Krishna, you should be meditating on the pastimes of Krishna. You should also be meditating on the form of Krishna, and you should also be meditating on the qualities of Krishna. That is actually the proper chanting of Hare Krishna, when the mind is absorbed in the guna, the qualities, the rupa, the form, and the lila, the pastimes. That's the goal of Krishna consciousness, to be totally absorbed in thinking of Krishna 24 hours a day. Then Prabhupada said, but if you can't do that, then just try to chant and just try to hear. So, okay, so we understand a little context, that we're just trying to hear because we're not yet at that stage where we're thinking of the pastimes. Then the question was asked, Prabhupada, is it okay to think of the pastimes? The question was asked, while I chant, is that okay? Because we're told we should just hear, so then the question comes, well, if I should just hear, is it okay to chant? Is it okay to think of the lila? And Prabhupada said, you should know that the goal of chanting is to think of the lila, to think of the form, think of the qualities. But it shouldn't be artificial. It should come naturally due to your attraction or attachment to chanting or your advancement in Krishna consciousness. Everything in Krishna consciousness should be more or less natural. Sometimes we have to force ourselves, but we don't force ourselves into very elevated stages of meditation. That would be artificial. So Prabhupada's saying, that is the goal, to be meditating on hearing. Meditating on the lila, guna, and the rupa. Now, another thing you may have heard that Prabhupada said, hear yourself chanting sincerely. So that brings in another dimension, sincerity. In other words, chant sincerely. So what does sincerity mean? Well, Prabhupada has defined sincerity as being free of personal motivation. So chant to Krishna with the desire for pure bhakti. What does that mean? It's chanting as a prayer. Krishna, please give me your service. Please give me your pure devotional service. So now we have an added dimension where the devotee is praying for pure service. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, the holy name descends on the tongue when there's this mood of, I want to serve, pure service. Otherwise it can be mechanical. So then the problem is, now devotees say, but if I'm hearing, and now you want me to add in this mood of sincerity, of prayer for pure bhakti, how do I do both? Thinking they're mutually exclusive. And the point is, they're not mutually exclusive. The mood helps one become more absorbed. And if we think they're mutually exclusive and we lose the mood, then it can become mechanical. So when we say just chant and hear, it can become a very mechanical process where we disassociate from the meaning of the holy name. Jiva Goswami says, any mantra you chant, you should meditate on the meaning. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, when you chant, you should meditate on the meaning of the holy name. So if we're just chanting more or less mechanically, just trying to hear and speak and divorced of the meaning, that can be dangerous. It may not be, but it can be dangerous in that, at least for some of us, we tend to go for more mechanics of something and a little bit of the smarta mood of thinking, if I perfect the mechanics, I've perfected my chanting. Where chanting is not a perfection of mechanics, it's a perfection of absorption of the mind and heart in Krishna. So we don't want to just think, just if I just hear, that's perfect. It may be that that hearing will arouse remembrance and meditation on the qualities and so much emotion. But also, when Prabhupada says chant and hear yourself chanting sincerely, that means simultaneously that's really the mood. So I just wanted to present that context because I know that many devotees, that's their primary focus, is just to hear, which is not in and of itself wrong, but if we don't understand the context of it, it can kind of degrade into a more mechanistic, mechanical way of chanting, and Prabhupada has warned us against that. And sometimes Prabhupada gives the example of the parrot who chants Hare Krishna. You can train the parrot, but when he's chased by the cat, he doesn't chant Hare Krishna, because his chanting was mechanical, it wasn't actually felt. And we've been discussing classes lately about remembering Krishna at the time of death, and Prabhupada said one who's accustomed to chanting will then at the time of death he'll automatically chant. So chanting, not just mechanically, I'm just trying to speak and hear, and that's all I'm trying to do, but be absorbed in the meaning, and then gradually the mind, as we advance more, become absorbed in meditation on the qualities of Krishna, the form, and the Leelas. Hare Krishna.